workshop 8, which is going to be Chatbook. If you're familiar with messaging apps like Messenger or WhatsApp, you might be familiar with like what this might look like. We're just going to integrate a chat function into our existing Chatbook application. So if you go to weblab.is/example, you can actually take a look at the implementation that we have right now. And you can chat with your friends if you so like if you don't have friends, you can also chat with all chat, which is the global like list of all the messages as well. All right, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. We're gonna end up building this up from the very bottom up, and let's go over how to do that. So the story so far, so we have this like gigantic component tree that we built up over the course of the last week. We're actually not going to do anything with any of this stuff today. We're just going to add a new branch called Chatbook, and I'm going to break this down and break down each of these components right now. So as you remember, right, we have like this React is about just a bunch of nested boxes, right, and we assign each of these nested boxes is sort of like inherent, like they represent something conceptually. So each of these components has some sort of function, and we can like based on this function like break down our website such that like each function is like mapped correctly. So right now, at the very top level, we have Chatbook, and it's marked in purple. Chatbook in this case is just the entire page. Everything that's on like that like appears when you click chat on the navigation bar should be Chatbook. On the left-hand side, we have chat list. And so the names of these are like a little bit confusing, but it's okay. We can go through those. Chat list is a list of all the open chats that we ever had. So all the people that we talked to, all of the like users that we can possibly chat with. Below that is single user, which is just a single, like again, it's a single user. So it could be like all chat or myself. And it's just a way to further like decompose chat lists in a sense. All right, on the right-hand side, we have chat. And chat, in this case, is the actual like chatting function itself. So we have like this header that tells us like we're chatting with all chat. We have each individually, we have like every single message listed in chronological order from earliest to latest, the latest at the very bottom. And then we also have this like new message field where we can submit new messages and talk to our friends. So this is represented, right, by these different components. So you can kind of see how it intuitively like breaks down, right? We have like all these different like parts of the website and that chat, and they all break down into their own individualized components. Okay, so breaking those a little bit, right? As of for today, we're not going to actually do anything with the left-hand side. So we're not going to build up the basically direct message functionality. We're going to focus on the right side, which is all chat, or which is just do it for like a global sort of chatting application. And so let's break this down a little bit more. Let's take a look at what kind of props and state we'll need to support in our application. So from the top down, right, we have Chatbook, chat, single message, and new message. Think about what information we'd like to display in our Chatbook, right? You want to be able to display a list of all the messages that have ever been sent in Chatbook. And we also want to be able to have like for each message, we also want to be able to show who sent it, right? And what time we also want we want to show who sent it and also what they sent. So what the content of the messages as well, right? So breaking this down, right? If we have chat data for a specific like instance of a chat, we want to be able to track a list of messages, which in this case is represented as an array of message objects, as well as the recipient, which is a user object. And so let's talk about what these mean in a little bit. Message objects, in this case, each message is represented, right? It has to have both a sender, right? You can see like kind of, if I move this around, you can see like each message has like both a sender as well as some content. A sender in this case is just a user object. And the content in this case is like the content of the text that we put into the message. Below this is user object. And so each user, so both chat data and message object has a user object associated with it. Chat data has a recipient, right? Who the messages that we're sending it to. And message object has a sender. So who's sending the message? Both of these are considered users, and each user has an internal ID that we use to maintain like differences between different people with the same name, and also a name, right? Because every person has a name. All right. These are the different like and so we have all this data, and we want to pass we want to be able to pass all of this down selectively, right? We don't necessarily need all the chat data in like single message or new message, right? But we do want, like, let's say if we want to make a new message, we want to be able to have like the recipient of the new message get the message, right? Or if we like have an instance of a message, we want to be able to pass like the content of that message into this component so that it can be displayed accurately. Okay. That was the breakdown of the props and state. Next up, we're going to go. So that was basically the whole front end plan. The whole idea here is that we want to be able to build this up front end and back end, and then we're going to connect it together using the stuff that we just learned from Nick. Okay. As for the back end, it's a little bit less involved, I think. We basically need to support these two different endpoints. The first is get chat, and the second is post message. And this should be pretty intuitive to you, right? If we have like a list of messages on our server somewhere, right? We first want to be able to add new messages to that list of messages, right? And we also want to be able to get like the whole list and view them all at once. And those are just the two functionalities we have here. And it makes most sense to use them as get and post requests. Okay. We have basically, but we do have to implement these on our in our backend, and we'll go about how to do that in a little bit. And so at the very end, right, we'll be able to have a client be able to get and post to get the list of, get all the chats that have occurred, as well as post a new message to the server. And this is the functionality that we want to support. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll start making we'll be able to implement direct messages. As for today, we're just going to focus on like a global chat, basically. Okay. So quick recap, right? This is what the front end is going to look like. This is what the back end is going to look like. I think you have the link to the slides if you need them. And you can refer back to these whenever you'd like. Let's get started with the workshop components. So first going to git fetch, and then git reset fetch is hard. So everything you need to do. I'm going to pull up VS Code and see if I can sort this out. Okay. So you might notice right now, if you were to start from W8 starter, this branch, you'll notice that the chat page is actually completely blank, even when you're logged in. And this is because we haven't implemented anything yet, which is good. It makes sense. So let's try to make something appear here. The goal here is to be able to send. So we're going to start from the very base level, right? We're going to start by just like making these single message and new messages components. And when we send a new message, instead of just like, we're just going to focus purely on front end for now. When we make a new message, all we want to do is just like have it display and have it like log in the console. We're not going to send anything to the backend yet. Just make everything work in the front end first before doing anything else. And you notice that we're starting with these two components because they're the simplest, right? The single message and new message are like the very base level, like individual, like can't really break them down further than this. Okay, so how do we go about doing this? There's a rigorous 6-step plan, but it's not that complicated. It's pretty okay. Let's start off with new message and work on implementing that first. So, if you go to new post input.js, new message is basically a special instance of new post input. And you can see that we already have some skeleton code in here for you. And what we want to do here is we want to basically use the existing class new post input. And you can see the kind of like format that it follows, right? It has two props that we pass in, which is default text. Default text is like the default like text that's displayed before you type anything into the text input. And then it has a function called onSubmit, which basically gets called when you click the submit button. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this and implement this for new message. And so we're going to do something similar to the lines above. We have new post input. We're going to set default text equal to, and in this case, we want this to be a new message because we're implementing the new message functionality. And so cool. And then on submit, in this case, we don't have a function built in for this yet, but I'm just gonna put in a placeholder because I feel like it. It will be send message. All right. And this is the first step, the first part of step one. The next step is to actually like build up this send message function. And what this should look like, we're gonna make this function. So eventually what we want to do, right? We want to be able to send a message and have it like get pushed to the back end and have it stored there. But for now, right, we're just doing everything in the front end. We're not going to do any like interaction and any interaction yet. So we're just going to console log the value that gets passed in here. So full screen and zoom in. Wait. Oh. How do I zoom in? Oh my goodness, I wasn't sure. Yeah, my bad. This is going so well. Okay. Okay. Back to this. So we now have the send message, the send message function, and what all it's going to do is just log whatever text that we pass into whatever text we pass in once it's typed, once we press submit. Okay, that was new message. So next up, we want to do is implement a single message. So each single message, right? If you remember from this example image, it has like a sender as well as a like content, or as well as some content that we display as text right next to it, right? And so we wanted both of these to be reflected in our single message component. So if we go into single message.js, we can go ahead and start implementing this. So there is a big div, a big container that contains both of these two individualized parts. I'm gonna add some CSS classes, make this formatting a little bit nicer. You don't necessarily have to know where these come, or I think most of these come from like various CSS files, such as utilities.css as well as single message.css. And you can look at those if you are curious about what these do. Okay, so this is the big overall container. So this will have both the this will contain both the name, like the name of the sender, as well as the text of the message. On the left-hand side, right, we want to have we're going to first implement the sender. And so we're going to use this the span tag for this, because span tags end up in line rather than like in blocks, which basically means that like instead of appearing like two different paragraphs, they'll appear like in the same line, which is what we want. So this also has a bunch of CSS classes associated with it. We're going to go ahead and type those in. Okay. And the text we want to display within the span tags is just the name of the sender, right? And so we can look at what kinds of props get passed in here, right? We get passed in a message object, right? Because each single message is associated with this message object, right? And each message object has this sender, and each sender, right, is a user object that has a name. So like we're kind of like decomposing from message object to user object to name. And that's the information that we want here. So we have the props. We have a message.
You can zoom in one more notch.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We have props.message dot. So this is the message that gets passed in as a prop. We also have a sender for that message, and we also have a name for that sender. So there's this whole decomposition going on. For us to get the name of the sender. Next up is the actual text, the content of the message, and we get this in a similar way. So we end up using, so I'm going to use a similar span for this, and I'm going to add these CSS classes as well. to get the desired formatting. And the text we display here, right, since it's a message object, it has both the sender and content. And so we're going to get the content from here, like so. Props.message.content, right? Similar format as above. We're just decomposing to this level instead. Okay, that's single message. So now we have both of the two, like, I guess, lower level components, single message and new message. Let's put those together and build up chat, which is the like right box that you'll see here. That consists of like chatting with all chat, which is like a big header, a list of all the messages that have ever been sent, as well as the new message field. So let's go ahead and implement this. This is going to be in chat.js. Let's get started with that. Okay, so like before, we're going to have a big div that represents like the container that holds all of our individual components. And this is how this is the formatting we're going to use for this. At the very top of the screen, right, we have like, I don't know if you can see this. That made it worse. Okay. At the very top of the screen, if you look at like an example, the example that we have in the top right, there's like there's like a header that tells us who exactly we're chatting with. And so we're just going to display that here. If you remember, right, in chats, right, we have this like prop called chat data, and chat data has both the recipient as well as like a list of messages, and the recipient is what we want to display here. So let's go ahead and add in this header. We're going to use the h3 tag for this, and we're going to just be able to display whoever the recipient of our messages are. And if you remember, that recipient is also a user object, and user object has a name that's associated with it as well. And this is how we get like the name of the recipients of our messages. Okay. Next up is like the list of all the messages that have ever been sent. And the way we get this is we're first going to make a big container that holds all of the messages. We're going to call it, and we're going to format it like so. We're also going to go ahead okay. The way we do this, right? We want to be able to, right now we have like chat data is like the props that it has like a list of messages, right? And chat data, like list of messages that we see here, they're all message objects. We don't really have a way to display these yet, right? But what we can do is if we can like sort of convert each message object into like a single message component, then we can end up displaying it on our screen. And so I think Nick went over this, but there's a really nifty function called map that helps us do this. What map does is like it's kind of in the name. It'll map each like element or message object in an array to a component. And the formatting, the syntax we're going to use right here. So we're going to take props.data, which is the chat data object. We're going to get the messages from there. And then we're going to map each individual message object to a new component. And so I'm going to go over the syntax for this in a little bit and explain what exactly is happening here. Okay, so what exactly is happening here? In map, right, we have this function, right, that we've defined, and what this function is what gets applied to each of the messages, each of the message objects. And so I'd be curious as to what M and I are. In this case, like M is just the like message objects, each individual message object, and I is the index of that message object in the array. And the reason we have to use both M and I here, whereas like normally you can actually just forego this, is because we want to have this like key prop that gets passed in as well. And you might be kind of confused because in single message.js, we didn't actually have this prop. The reason we're including it here is because React gets very angry if you don't do it, and we want to make React happy. So and it has, so basically in case where you have to map like multiple of the same components, you make sure to include a key so that you can differentiate between these different components. Am I moving a little too fast for people? It's okay, I can slow down. Okay, I will talk slightly slower. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, but this is how we end up getting like, this is how we end up like taking our list of messages, message objects, and converting each one into its own component that gets displayed on the page. Okay, so now we have our header that contains like the recipient of our messages. We also have this like chat history that contains all the messages that have been sent so far. Now we need to put in our new message submission form, and this is going to have its own container as well. Let's put this in as well. So we're just going to use the component that we just made, which is new message, and we're going to pass in the recipients like so. So again, right, chat has a prop, right, called chat data. Chat data has both a list of messages as well as a recipient. And so we want to pass in here is just the recipient object itself. So we can use it in the new message, submission later on. All right. So that's step 1.4 complete. And so far, right, like you might feel like we're kind of done at this point because we basically have everything we need. Like we have like the recipient name. We also have like the list of all the messages. We also have like a news message submission form. But the thing is that none of this actually will appear on the page unless we tell it to appear on the page, right? If you go back to our chat book, it's still like blank. It's still blank. So we need to get this chat to appear on the screen somewhere. And this page is called chatbook.js. So we're going to navigate to that file real quick. It's under pages. So if you go to components and then pages, you can come here and you can see that we have another to do to implement. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add in, we're going to make some containers, and then we're going to add in our chat component that we just made so they can actually show on the page. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to first make this big overarching container. So if you remember from the slides, we had like this gigantic page, and this container has to be its own div. So we're going to make this first, and we're going to call this, we're going to assign it with these specific CSS classes. On a lower level below that, we're going to have like the chat container. So we're going to put our chat component within this container. It's going to be another div. And we're going to use these classes. All right. So now we can actually insert our chat component. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's pass in the props that we need, right? We want to be able to pass in chat data, right? And data has both a list of messages and a recipient. As of right now, we're just going to implement like we're just implementing like a global chat function. So I'm just gonna put in some constants. We haven't defined these yet. So it's okay to not know where these come from. But we're gonna assign these values to constants and then define them in the next step. and then we're gonna close this up. Okay. And so these constants are just going to be some dummy data for us to use. And I'm just going to paste these in. I've copied them, I think, on my clipboard. I'm going to paste these in, and then you can. Is there a way for? I think there isn't an easy way for you to paste this in, but I will. Okay, I think we can try this the next step, and then we can look at see what this looks like. I basically just added some constants that represent like the recipient as well as the list of messages. And these dummy variables, what they contain is a recipient called all chat, which this will represent like everyone in the world basically. And also we have this constant test messages. And test messages is basically just a list of messages in the format that we specify, right? So we have each message. First it's an array, and every element of this array has a sender, has some content, and each sender has an ID and a name. And so it follows the same format as that we specified before. Okay, so now we go to Chatbook, which should hopefully work. Or it could break. That'd be cool. Okay, we're gonna do some lucky. Oh my goodness. Okay, give me 1 second to figure what is happening now. Okay, so when navigate the chat page, it seems to be breaking. Okay, so there's some formatting issues. Okay, there you go. And so after doing that, we can actually see the messages that the test messages that we just added in the formatting that we desire. And we also have like this nice structure, so we can go ahead and modify this further if needed. So this was all of the front end. And if you want to catch up, I realized I went kind of fast. So if you want to catch us to where I just ended, you can go to git checkout W8-step 1 and try to walk through what we just did. Basically, that we started from, if we take a look at this like component tree, right? We have new message, single message, chat, and chatbook. These are the components that we just made. And we basically just went through and just built them from the ground up, right? We started with new message. We basically like figured out how to make like this. We used our existing like new post input component. And we used this to message. We also created each single message component to display both the name of the sender as well as the content of the message. We also built up the chat function as well as Chatbook. So, okay. This is the whole progression of step 1. And this is basically the whole front end just built up already. Okay. Now that we have the front end,